Hi, I'm Ems, aka On Deck and Wings, and here I have two pieces of terrain which are 3D printed out and assembled. These are inspired by the tabletop game Trenchcrusade. Please do like, comment and subscribe if you can. So these printable files are from a guy called Vargas Miniatures. I'll put the link in the description below where you can get these, and he has a load of other cool designs inspired by Trenchcrusade. So I'm going to go through the painting process of these two models, starting out with the guy with the gas mask. What I've done first of all, before I primed it, I added some texture paste to this to add some extra crust and rust to it. You can just use whatever basing paste that you use, but texture paste, what you can get from art brands, is a lot cheaper. PVA glue mixed with sand is also a great way to create texture, and you can also use tile grout mixed with a bit of water and sand as well. And these work great for basing materials on the cheap. So I've primed the model with black, and then I've gone over it with Hyrax Brown from Colourforge. It's like a Rhinox High kind of colour. And I've got a Cobalt Steel and a Cobalt Grey, which I've mixed together from two thin coats. And we're going to start off with the cross. I personally really like the aesthetic of Trenchcrusade. It has like a mix of religious iconography and World War I aesthetics. And it has that overtly 40k grimdark aesthetic to it, because John Blanche, the artist behind Warhammer 40,000, worked on it. Anyway, moving on, I've mixed that Cobalt Steed Brown with some Rubber Black from AK. And what I'm doing here is I'm drawing some lines across the cross to kind of create like wood grain. I also really enjoy the aesthetics of World War I. I like my history, especially 20th century history. And obviously I do enjoy art, and art outside of just miniature painting, and I do see some crossovers with an artist called Otto Dix. I'll put the link in the description below referencing this artist if you want to have a look at some more of his work. And now what I've done is I've grabbed some bright ivory and I've mixed that in with my original colours which I mixed for the cross. Otto Dix was a German artist who served in World War I on the German side. He was heavily affected by the war and obviously the economic downturn of Germany afterwards. He, along with a lot of other German artists, had these very dark impressionist paintings, including a lot of trenches and people wearing gas masks. I'm just doing those lines again with that lighter colour, as I said, to create a wood grain texture look. Moving on to the skin now, so the person that's on the cross, I've mixed a beige rose colour and a wine red colour to create this deep red flesh tone. Both of these paints are from the AK Interactive 3rd Generation range, and it's one of my favourite ranges to work with at the moment. I'm going to create something a little bit odd here, so I've got some chipping medium, and I'm going to be putting this all over the flesh areas, and I want to create this flaking sort of flesh effect since he's somebody on a cross, so he might be exposed to the elements, and just to kind of add to that grimdark, gnarly aesthetic. Once the chipping medium are dried, I've mixed a basic Caucasian flesh tone with that beige rose colour, and I'm going to put this all over the top. I do find early 20th century art really interesting because people moved away from trying to do photorealistic paintings to more abstract things and more representation of how they felt about the world and the subconscious and the mental side of things. Once this paints are dried, I reactivated the chipping medium with water, and now I'm just scraping away the top layer with a toothpick. And as I said, it makes him look like he's been whipped and scarred and exposed to the elements. I then put some varnish over the top, so I didn't reactivate the chipping medium. Once the varnish had dried, I grabbed a speed paint from the Army Painter. This is Crusade Skin. Now I know this is more like a contrast paint, so it's thicker, but I've watered it down, and now it's more like a wash. And this is going all over the flesh tone just to create some more richness and to go into the recesses. I know I grabbed Old Silver from Darkstar Molten Metals, and I'm just going all over the areas which are metallic, like the speakers and there's some different like little bits and pieces which I think would be metallic. I wanted to add some more rust and richness to the metal areas, so I've mixed a mid-tone red oxide wash from Vallejo along with the environmental wash, which is very dark brown, and that paint also has some texture to it. I then dabbed off the excess so you can still see some of the metal showing through. Moving on to the gas mask, I've got Deathworld Forest Green from Citadel. And then I have mixed a combination of buff and off-white from AK Interactive 3rd Generation again. And this is going over like the loincloth areas. And then I've got some sepia tone from Citadel, and I'm just washing it over the loincloth and also the ropes as well, which I've painted up in the same colours. I'm a fan of gas masks, especially the World War era ones and the Cold War Soviet ones. Anyway, I've got some of that Deathworld Forest again, and I'm dry brushing this over the top of the sandbags. I've mixed some of that AK buff in with this colour I'm using now, that green, and I'm just adding a few highlights here and there just to pick out the shape of the sandbags. So this is the first miniature piece done. I think it looks brilliant. It has this really grim aesthetic to it, perfect for trench crusades. And now moving on to the bigger piece of cross terrain. So I've just grabbed a generic grey from AK Interactive here, and I'm just dry brushing this all over the top of the cross. And then I've just dabbed on a lighter grey from AK to create some texture and variation and highlights. I'm just using a piece of sponge. I thinned down some of that AK rubber black with that Deathworld green, just to create a wash and some variation. And then I grabbed that same silver from before, and I've just put it over the piping areas. And then I've got copper from Darkstar Molten Metal, just for a few pops of colour on some of the other metallic areas. It's a shame that Otto Dix and a lot of his fellow artists in Germany at the time ended up being persecuted by the Third Reich, as they didn't like the artwork and wanted to go back to traditionalism. I just added a wash of sepia tone and then some thinned down Wildwood contrast paint. And then over the top of that I added some turquoise paint just to create some more rust colours and textures. It's worth looking up the topic Entartete Kunst, or Degenerate Art, which was an art show which the Third Reich put on to make fun of artists like Otto Dix, where the art would be displayed and made fun of with captions. I'll put the link in the description below to a documentary on that. And here I've just added some Doombull Brown, and I'm just dry brushing some flesh tone mixed with Doombull Brown to create some highlights. And this is the cross finished. So I really liked how both of these pieces of terrain came out. They're very much Trench Crusade inspired and grim, and I wanted to create these desaturated tones with them. I usually work with a lot of colour, but I tried to restrict myself a bit more. As always, thank you for watching. If you want to support me on Patreon or social media, I've got links in the description below. Remember to enjoy your hobbies for yourself, and at the end of the day, they're just Wardollies. I will hopefully see you in the next one.